Fwrd Axis News, Future and Balance.
Welcome to Fwrd Axis Live, a Fwrd Axis news production, bringing you the latest stories in the worlds of news, sports, politics, and entertainment. Fwrd Axis News, Future and Balance.
Welcome to Fwrd Axis Live. I am your host, David Bradford, and today we have a very special guest. He's a musician, a startup founder, and the guitarist of Incubus. Welcome, Mike Einziger. It's been a couple of years since the last time we spoke. Last time I was on the phone and wasn't in this kind of a post-COVID normal Zoom meeting setting. So,
if it could be called post-COVID.
Post-COVID. The post-COVID episode. Yeah, I'm still adjusting to the format too. So this should be good. Not too awkward, but it's funny. I was just watching like a few interviews leading up to this, and I saw that you had recently become a fan of Kirbys Enthusiasm, and that is one of my favorite shows of all time, simply because of my unexpected relatability to Larry David. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is. So
I think that's why people gravitate towards that show, because so many people really do relate to his sort of, anxiety-ridden paranoia about the world. His neuroticism is like, it's funny because I discovered. I knew about the show, but I had never actually really watched it, and then I binged watched it during the pandemic, and was just like, this is like being inside of my own brain. It's like so weird, and so many people in the show remind me of family members or people that I grew up with, and there's a very sort of specific Jewish community in Los Angeles that if you grew up in LA, it's its own sort of little weird neurotic world, and that show fully captures that, just that idea in such a unique way. It's hard to put into words, but pretty awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah, there's so many great things, whether it be being engaged at a Stop and Chat or Crazy Eyes Killer, that's a great episode, where he's giving notes to the rapper about his song. It's the most unlikely thing, but he falls right into it, and and his dynamic with Leon and then everything like that is fantastic.
Yeah, it's hilarious. They actually filmed certain parts of that show in a house that's really close to where I live, and I didn't realize it until I watched the show. Wow. It was like, oh my God, that's my neighbor's house. Really funny.
That's great. Let's talk about your current tour right now, because there seems to be a full circle moment with Sublime, right? Because back in '95, you were working for Golden Voice.
Yeah, I used to go and pass flyers out for them for certain shows, and it was sort of a way I could kind of, weasel my way on, our band's way onto bills. And they somehow put us on that Sublime. There was a Sublime concert. There's actually a live video of that concert. It's on YouTube. It was Sublime live at the Palace. We opened that show, and the other artists on that show were Wesley Willis, this other hip hop group called the Lords of Brooklyn, and us. And we were the very first band, but to us at that time, it was playing in a stadium, the venue is so much bigger than any other venue we had played before that. And I do remember that at that show, that was the first time I ever signed an autograph for somebody I didn't know who just came up and wanted to it was a very surreal experience. But yeah, we were huge Sublime fans, especially in the mid 90s, 95. It was right after we graduated high school. We were really building our momentum as a local band that had a real sort of drawing power, and that's how we got put on that show, by the way. We wouldn't have been able to get on that show with Sublime if we didn't have that sort of draw. But there was a very specific thing that happened where, we were playing a lot of shows, but a lot of the people at the shows were people that we knew, and we were kind of giving our friend group and then our friends of friends groups something to do on a weekend when they otherwise would have just been bored. there was a point in time where we didn't know the audience anymore. Like, people were coming that were not our friends. They were just they were fans. And that Sublime show that we played in 1995 at the Palace was really kind of seemed to me like, at least in my memory of it, is like sort of the beginning of that transition from like playing for our friends and our friends' friends to like, we're now playing in front of an audience that is coming from all over the place. And these are people we have no social connection to. Like, it was a very surreal experience. Like I said, it was the first time I remember signing something like for somebody that like I really didn't know. That was crazy. And the Sublime audience was a crazy mixture of like ska kids, like punk rock kids. It was pretty grimy, actually. Like, it really was underground at that time. They hadn't blown up yet commercially, but they were big on like an underground level. A lot of like weird sort of like mixture of skinheads, punks, and like sort of like cholo gangsters, like from Long Beach and like from LA. Like, it was a very interesting, kind of a little bit like you didn't know what was going to happen.
It's a little bit dangerous, but we're going to be we'll be all right as long as we play well.
Well, also Sublime would always show up like hours late,
right?
And they were always like way fucked up. Like, and that was just like, there was this vibe that would sort of take over the building when they would arrive. And it would be like all their friends were coming in too. It was just like, it was chaos. It was kind of like, but intoxicating in more ways than one. And then they would play though. And they had Bradley like was this sort of, even if he was drunk or even if he was intoxicated, like he was just this amazing writer and singer, and like his talent was undeniable. So it was really special to be able to be around that and at least like be witness to that and play some of those shows with them during that time period, because he passed away I think in 96, so it was like not long after.
Their trajectory, they were like starting, it kind of stopped short. So that's what makes me happy, like as a fan, to see them continue. And then you were open for them, and now they're on a bill with you guys again.
Yep.
And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's all very surreal to me, playing shows, touring with bands that we grew up listening to and really like looking up to musically. Like, that became something that happened a lot in our career. And it doesn't really like, I think the older I get, the more I appreciate how crazy that is. Like, it's pretty just unlikely that would happen, but it did for us, and I feel very lucky for that.
That's amazing. Yeah, like as unlikely as anything could be in this life, there's like even more of that layer on top of it. We can totally get into another conversation about humanity and the start of the universe. That's for a different day. But yeah, as far as like unlikely career, there's so many different things in life in general that have to happen in order for other things to happen.
Yes.
And
it's very unlikely or it's just really hard to, as an artist, to create something, whether you're like a visual artist or, a poet or a lyricist or a musician or whatever kind of artist you might be, to create something that people care about is like really, really unlikely and really challenging and hard to do. So, I'm continually amazed at like what we've accomplished, and that we actually have an audience that cares about the music we made. It's really rare to have that. So I just feel lucky.
It's such an incredible thing, like from the time that Make Yourself came out, and then to have people connect with all those singles that came out, and like each one kept on getting more response. And now all these years later, people still love it. Like, whether it's like people coming on board now or people that are my age that have all these memories tied to all of these songs that mean something to them. And that's the ability to connect with that. It is an amazing thing to have achieved. So congratulations on all of that and all the milestones and anniversaries. A couple of years back before the pandemic happened, the Make Yourself anniversary tour. And then just last year, we'll talk about another album, Morning View. So how is it going back to that house? There was a live stream performance on October 23rd, I believe it was. So how was that, like, going back into the house? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it had been quite a long time since I'd set foot in that house, and the house is like the same. Maybe they like put some carpet in or something like that, but like the house is the same as it was when we were there. They haven't really like changed it at all. It's like going back in time. It's so crazy to like be in that room. And we spent like, I think it was 5 months or something like that there, writing and recording Morning View. And I just like, again, it's one of those things where like I kind of can't believe that we pulled that off. It's very unlikely that would actually work out, like a bunch of early 20 something year old kids making their sort of most successful album. Like at the time I was supremely confident that it was all going to work out, but like now as an like adult, I like can't believe that we actually pulled that off. Like I didn't want to be in a recording studio. I had a very strong set of opinions about all that, and even certain members of the band were like skeptical of it. Like they were worried, like, oh, maybe it won't sound good. Like, how are we going to do this? Like, because it was also a pretty large and like financial investment to go record in a house versus like being in a recording studio where everything's already there. I was very influenced by the Red Hot Chili Peppers had recorded an album they recorded Blood Sugar Sex Magic in a house that was owned by Rick Rubin, and like they made this documentary called Funky Monks, and like it's even to this day, like watching it is so inspiring. And they recorded in this really cool house, and like just not being in a studio, like, and that idea like was really exciting to me. The idea of taking over a space that was not intended, to be a place to record music, but like just making use of it and making use of other spaces in the house that like sound unique. That to me was like really exciting for a lot of different reasons. Like I worked in a recording studio and I had like learned a lot about recording. So the idea of like utilizing all these spaces for recording was super interesting to me. And then also like just having the freedom of not being in a studio and not like, being charged by the hour or by the day. It was more like we're just at home, and we can write and record whenever we feel like it. I loved the freedom. There was like a lot of freedom in that to me. So that whole experience was just like, it was awesome. It was like, I can't believe how well it worked out. So luckily we wrote great music, at the time. And, a lot of really interesting things happened while we were there. And it was just a great experience.
That whole sense of freedom that you were talking about, that comes across a lot on the album. There are tones and sounds that kind of feel to me like very warm. There's a character, different elements, and to hear that come across on that album, it's all authentic, and I love this. That's one of my favorite albums.
Yeah, there's like a very specific sound that room has. Like when we're in there, like hearing the sound of a snare drum in that room is like, oh yeah, like I remember that. Like it sounds very specific, and it's really cool to be able to get that. That was also the first time that I ever got to work with a group of orchestra players. Like when we did Aqueous Transmission and a few of the other songs that had string orchestra arrangements on them. That was the very first time we did all of that in that room, which is really funny. Actually, what was funny about it was I had been surfing earlier that morning when we recorded the string sections, and I ran into Zach De La Roca from Rage Against the Machine at the beach, and I didn't know him personally. I just like saw him. I'd never met him before.
That's wild.
He was sitting there, and I walked up to him and I was like, hey man, like I'm just like a big fan. He was like, hey, I heard you guys like rented this really cool house. And I was like, yeah, like it's up by Zuma Beach. And he was like, I'd like to come check it out. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I was like, you want to follow me up there right now? And he was like, yeah. And I was just thinking to myself the whole time, I was like, oh my God, the guys in my band are going to freak out. Like I'm about to walk in the house with Zach. Everybody's going to be like, what the hell is happening right now? And because we were all like huge Rage Against the Machine fans. So I bring Zach over to the house and everybody's like, what the fuck? Like, and then all the string players showed up and we recorded all the strings for like, you know, the songs on that album that day. Zach hung out for like a few hours and it was just like a really cool experience getting to meet him. And, you know, we ended up touring with Rage a bunch later and becoming good friends with all those guys. Yeah, that was the first time meeting Zach, and such a weird thing to like meet somebody like that and then have him come over, and like he was such a big influence on us, you know.
Again, like unlikely situations where it's like you just walking along and there he is, you know. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
I guess only in LA would something like that happen.
Yeah.
Malibu.
Now, all these years later, like there's families, there's other things that you're doing and everything like that. How do you keep everything fresh? Some people have feigned passion, but I've seen you guys and you guys like leave it all out there still to this day. Always. It's always authentic. It's always genuine. How do you continue that and keep that young spirit alive that you had when you started?
I mean, my perspective on music has changed a lot over the years. You know, as I evolve personally, those views shift over time. And if anything, especially, you know, even since the pandemic, sort of in the absence of being on tour, that old sort of cliche saying that absence makes the heart grow fonder. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. Like being off the road for several years, I really like realized how much like I kind of missed it. And also how special the experience is for us as musicians to get to like go and travel all over the world and play the music that we wrote for people who actually care about it. And I think they care about it more now than they did before. At least that's the way I perceive it, because like music plays this really important role in our lives. It did for me. Like all the artists that like I grew up listening to, their music was the backdrop of my life for like all these different periods of time. And so when we play shows now, and I didn't feel this way before, I mean, or maybe I did, but maybe I just feel it more now, or I'm more aware of it. I'm more aware of how our music serves that purpose for the people that are there who love it. And like, I just have an immense appreciation for that. So in terms of like, I don't know if that qualifies as sort of like keeping it fresh, but it does really demonstrate this sort of just the power of music and the importance of it. And I'm just like so appreciative of it. It gives me a lot of joy to like play that music every night. And I don't care if like I have to play Drive 1,000 times. Like the fact that people care about it, the fact like I think a lot of like as a younger artist, like, you know, you'll hear like a lot of like younger artists being like, oh, I'm sick of playing this song or I'm sick of playing that song. It's like they're not yet at a point in their life where they actually realize that like it's rare that people even care, you know, like they just don't realize it. Because when you're young, like you think everything, like you think the world revolves around you. So like I see like the younger artists and I'm like, oh, you guys just don't even know yet. Like, that's cute, you know, like you think everything is gonna stay the way that it is forever, and that like, you know, but no, like, you know, or maybe they haven't faced any adversity yet or like whatever, you know. But 20 years later, 20 plus years later, if people still care, like that's just insane, you know. It's amazing. So so I think I find the most inspiration, honestly, like from that.
Awesome. Yeah, and you guys are playing for seas of people. I don't know how long ago it was, but I saw a picture on social media from Madrid. And, you know, it was like the two perspective thing. It was like the perspective from like the back facing the stage, and then it was yours. And I was like, that's incredible. You know, like it's to see that many people and all of them caring. Like that's it was incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal to go and be one of the headlining acts on that festival in Madrid. It was called the Mad Cool Festival. It was the first time we played a show in Europe since like 2018.
Wow.
I think it was 2018. I mean, I think we were supposed to go back to Europe in 2020, but it got canceled by the pandemic. So yeah, I mean, it was just like surreal, like to show up and have there be like, you know, 70,000 people or however many it was, and they're all singing like that. It's like, it doesn't like, yeah,
it's
like, it's like, it is, it's totally insane. And so, you know, like I keep saying, I must sound like a broken record, but like the older I get, the more I'm like, that's just so crazy. Just that people care, you know?
Yeah, and that's it's not really like sounding like a broken record. That's you're taking the time to like really appreciate that, which is cool to see. You were talking about the younger artists and they're jaded, and not all of them. It's that younger mindset where you're not quite yet at the point where your perspective is shifting into a more mature state of looking back and seeing things for what they actually were. And that's the point that you are now, which is showing appreciation.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way of describing it. And there's kind of no substitute for just time on this earth to be able to learn certain things about the world. You can't explain that to a younger person. There's no way to. But that makes it also special to be sort of in this place that I'm at now. It makes it feel like, wow, like I actually traveled someplace in terms of my perspective.
Awesome. Let's shift it over to Mixhalo. Okay, so like at least in the States, is there a plan in place kind of for like having a wider adoption of this technology?
Yeah, so what we're doing is, we're still, we're obviously still a startup with, like a relatively small team. So the reason why we're not sort of everywhere all at once is because there's the technology aspect of it, which is like you have to solve the problems that need to be solved in order for the technology to work really well and really reliably. But then there's also the business model for adoption and building a business around it, which is ultimately what people care about when they utilize a new technology. And so we have a few like very sort of key flagship use cases that we're focusing on. One of them, a very important one of them, being LAFC at Bank of California Stadium. And so we're focusing really our efforts on creating those use cases and showing their value. And that takes time to do. And then once if you can get that right, really well in one scenario with one team or a few teams rather than like a whole bunch of teams, you can prove out the use case and it can become adaptable to many places at once. So we're kind of focusing on like certain key cities and partnerships. And, we've got on August 13th, Will Ferrell and John McEnroe are going to call the LAFC game.
I saw that, yeah.
And, it's exclusive content for Mixhalo, which is really exciting. I'm a massive, massive fan of John McEnroe. I grew up watching him play tennis, and he's like one of the most interesting characters in sports, in my opinion. But he's also hilarious and he's really funny. He's got just an amazing personality. He's a great conversationalist. I'm also like a lifelong Will Ferrell fan. He's obviously like one of the most entertaining people. And the idea of them commenting on sports together is and also, a sport for McEnroe, a sport outside of tennis. And it's just going to be really interesting. So I'm really excited about the opportunity for Mixhalo to kind of create these new opportunities for sports broadcasting, for different types of entertainment. It's a great use of the technology. The technology has expanded and developed greatly in recent years. And we also have several like very large scale projects that are being built that I can't talk about, but not yet, but they're coming. And they're really exciting. So it's a quite an exciting time for Mixhalo right now.
Awesome. For the people that don't know what it is, Mixhalo takes the sound that is coming out of the soundboard at an event or a concert or a sporting event, and it is putting it into people's ears and connecting them through an app that's already on your phone. There's no extra hardware needed. It's everything that you already have in your pocket. Everybody you can get or has headphones already. And the greatest part about it is that it is extremely low latency. There's no delay, like no matter where you are. You could be on one end of the stadium in the nosebleeds or be side stage and hear the same exact thing. It's incredible. And that's what kind of like piqued my interest at the beginning of all this, because I thought to myself, I've been to some shows that it felt like it was at a venue that shouldn't have been a venue for any kind of like anything that would need great and precise sound acoustics whatsoever. This kind of moves past all that, and that's really cool. I was thinking about it the other day, and could something like Mixhalo be beneficial tool of enjoyment for somebody with sensory issues? You know, if you have like people that get overstimulated by sounds, and would this kind of help out to like bring that type of anxiety down and like allow people to enjoy things in the same way that other people can?
Absolutely. Mixhalo offers a whole sort of next level of control and personalization for people who have audio sensitivities, because they can control the volume that they're listening at, and then they can also potentially control other aspects of what they're listening to. So you can listen at whatever volume's comfortable for you. That's a great thing, especially in environments where noises are really loud. So we have had some experiences with people with sound sensitivities, noise sensitivities, who have reacted very, very well to being able to control the volume of what they're listening to. And that would expand outward, you know, not just from concerts and sports events, but also like at movies. Like a lot of people that have sound sensitivity issues don't like going to movies for that purpose. It's too loud for them. And there are use cases that we're exploring with movies where people can listen at a volume that's comfortable for them, but also in different languages, et cetera. That's another aspect of our technology that's really cool, is that we could give somebody in a movie theater the ability to listen in Spanish or in, you know, whatever other languages can be offered.
Yeah, see, it's something, again, like where, you know, you had this idea and then you go with it, you go with the right people, but it's your curiosity that set off this chain reaction that is affecting people who were not able to enjoy things the same as other people. And this is allowing them to kind of break out of that and to feel more free. You know, so it goes beyond just sound. It goes into people's lives and like allowing them to experience things maybe for the first time in a more pleasant way. That's an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at the very beginning, the idea for Mixhalo, like we knew really could branch out for a lot of different use cases and serve a lot of different purposes. Music happened to be sort of the genesis of the idea, but it was really exciting to me to contemplate like different ways that it could be used. Like, for example, a live real-time emergency broadcast system as a way to like get information to people's mobile devices in real time with no latency, large scale public events and things like that. It would be really, really helpful. Then there are other aspects of it that are less sort of obvious, but are potentially even more important, which is, you know, because we're developing technology that moves data in real time across networks, you know, networking is a big business, whether it's mobile networking, wireless networking, Wi-Fi networking, they're all transferring data and they're all trying to figure out ways of doing it faster and more reliably. And because of the real-time nature of what Mixhalo does, we've been able to optimize certain aspects of networking in ways that are proprietary to us that no one's ever been able to do before. People don't believe it. You know, we've had conversations with large, you know, global technology companies, and they like literally don't believe that our technology can do what it does. And then we show them. We don't necessarily show them how it does it, but we show it what it does. And they're usually pretty shocked by it. So that part of it is really exciting to me. Just like going through that process, having that realization that like we've actually built something that is unique, that no one's ever been able to build before. And people have tried in the past to do certain things. And we've just found ways to solve these problems that are unique to us. And those have tremendous value as well. So, you know, we're learning all of this as we go. You know, anytime you do something new, when you're solving problems, you have to invent solutions to those problems. There's no like, you know, yeah, there are sort of, you know, well-trodden pathways for doing certain things, but not for everything. So that's part of the, you know, that's what I really get off on, is the innovative aspects of all of it. It's super exciting. That part of it doesn't get old.
Yeah, you're right. There's certain roads you go down. There's all these people going down with you, and then all of a sudden you find yourself nobody's ever been here before, and that's a cool thing. I think that it takes a certain amount of courage and willingness to kind of stick your neck out for something that you believe in, whether it be Incubus or being in a band in general, or starting a company, starting two companies. Like it's
Well, it's the same. It's like in whatever you do, like people are going to tell you that you can't do it, or that it's like, the odds are against you. And when we started a band when we were 15, everybody was like, oh, like it's a waste of time. Not everybody, but there are certain sort of naysayers that have loud voices, in your world, and they can be like, oh, like you'll never make it. The odds are so against you. But, it's like, well, we figured out how to do that. So it's sort of been a pattern that I've followed in my life where, like, if there's a hard thing to do, like it just kind of makes me want to do it more.
Yeah. It's like the good use of kind of that rebellious nature. There's this idea, we're going to do it. Taking that same kind of spirit, we'll shift to another Versicolor Technologies.
It's actually a couple of companies.
Okay.
One company develops biopharmaceutical drugs to treat inflammatory diseases, and the other is spinning out a cosmetic skincare company.
Excellent. And this all took place because your wife had Tenea Versicolor, right? And
yeah, my wife Ann Marie was in India and noticed that she had some lightened patches of skin on her back that turned out to be a symptom of a condition called Tenea Versicolor, and it's a very common, non-harmful, totally reversible skin condition that's caused by basically an imbalance in the skin microbiome. And it does two things that are super, super interesting. One is that it causes this sort of temporary lightening of these patches of skin, but the patches that are lightened, they are also protected from UV damage or from sunburn. So people that have these sort of lightened patches of skin think that they'll go in the sun and sort of even it out or whatever. But what ends up happening is that all the skin around the edges of these lightened patches just burns. And the lightened patches stay lightened and aren't affected or are much less affected by the sun. And that was really interesting to us. So we wanted to try and understand how this happens in the skin. And what we learned is that there are certain compounds that are produced in this skin condition that have these really potent anti-inflammatory properties, which really, and they're a combination of other factors that kind of weigh into it, but they cause these sort of clinical effects in the skin. And what really, like, if you isolate these compounds and use them for some benefit, what ends up happening is that they can actually resolve inflammatory skin diseases like psoriasis, atopic dermatitis, and sort of a less potent version of those is actually more like a sort of like an anti-aging product for the skin. And so those are separate things that we're developing in two separate companies. And it's really interesting. Like, I've just become obsessed with pharmacology and drug development. The process of drug development is really fascinating. The human body is just such a wondrous world of technology that we're trying to understand. So it's kind of like, it's like music. It's a really big place that you can spend the rest of your life exploring and learning about. So yeah, I absolutely love it. Like, it kind of ticks all the boxes for me in terms of like innovation, ingenuity. There's so much to be learned. It's endless.
Yeah, like the thing that kind of piqued my interest with that when I saw that was that I had that, a few years ago. And
most people have it at some point.
Yeah, it was weird. Like I noticed that I'm like looking in the mirror, like, what is it? And then, went to a doctor, found out that, that it's cool. I'm not going to die, So.
Well, it's an example of taking something that has sort of a perceived negative effect and then utilizing some aspect of it for something positive. And there are a lot of like really important drugs and things that are developed that way. I'm sure you've heard of like, there's certain venom from certain animals that can be turned into drugs or antidotes for poisons and things like that. And this is a good example of something that the body makes during what could be perceived as like a disease state, but actually imparts benefits on the body or on the skin. Our bodies evolved the ability to create these chemicals. And so they wouldn't be creating them if they were bad. The disease would be doing something really harmful. But in this case, it's not. It's doing something temporary that people just don't like to look at. They think it's like, oh, well, I want to get rid of this. But it turns out that there can be like a repurposing of some of these molecules for some really, really valuable benefits.
Awesome. So music and skin, that's good.
Music and pharmacology.
Yeah, there we go. That's more. Yeah.
Music, networking, and pharmacology. It's
That's
all
great.
exciting.
That's the headline right there. You're in the middle of a tour. We'll have to let you get back to that. And
yeah, I got to hop on the tour bus. We're going out to play a show in Camden, New Jersey today.
Camden tonight. Yeah. So it's a great thing to see you guys still touring so strongly. So congratulations on the longevity and the continued success and connections that you make with Incubus through your music and through your technology and through pharmacology. So all these connections. Thank you so much for taking the time out today. I know that it's a busy schedule.
Oh, good.
See you tonight.
All right, man.
All right.
Drive safe.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you for joining Fwrd Axis live. Hear this episode and more wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit www.fwrdaxis.com to get the latest news happening in our world today. Follow us on Twitter at Fwrd Axis Live